Your pet would like to have a word with you. In fact, your dog, cat, bird, horse, fish, even bearded dragon would like to have an entire conversation with you. But having that trans-species discussion is difficult without an interpreter or go-between, a specifically skilled individual who's been communicating with our animal friends for more than 3 decades, bridging gaps in understanding, elevating relationships, building peace and harmony among all Earth's creatures. That person is Suzan Vaughn, the Animal Whisperer.
In this episode, Cavy Communiques. Housing has always been tight and expensive here on the Central Coast of California, and finding an affordable place to rent is a significant feat. Unless you have extravagant resources and a minimum of 2 incomes, conforming to a landlord's contract and renting a place is the only way to a nest you can call home. The rules set down by the person who owned the mobile home I rented in 2006 included a no-pet policy. Finding myself in yet another pet-unfriendly situation made me sad, so I turned to heaven for answers. It was my most common prayer to my guides to show me the way. Please show me the way to my perfect animal companion for this time and circumstance in my life, I petitioned. And then I went on a trip to Northern California to visit family. One of the family members I visited lived with 4 other people and several dogs and cats. There was also another animal there who lived in an aquarium in the kitchen. Spirit called my attention to the glass box he lived in when I heard him coughing and sneezing. My hosts, noting my interest, saw it as an opening. "This is Wiggy. He's a long-haired guinea pig. Do you want him?" said the woman, scooping him out of the torn-up newspaper bedding and holding him toward me. Wiggy's long, gray-streaked hair made him look like he had spent time in a cosmetologist's chair with a streaking cap on. His tresses were dyed many shades of gray. This hand-sized rodent was clearly in a heightened state of anxiety as she lifted him. He made distressed wheeking sounds, but soon became quite silent. As she stood there holding him toward me, I didn't reach out to accept his body because I hadn't asked his permission yet, but I did reach out telepathically to soothe his fears. I told him I was not here to harm him, although nothing I communicated calmed him down. Taking advantage of my interest in the little guinea pig, my hosts sprang into action to show me what he could do, although it would be more accurate to say they showed me what they did to him. He was there for their entertainment, and I could tell she thought fun games might be a reason I would consent to take Wiggy home. Wiggy let out more distress calls as she brought him into the living room. The Sunday paper was scattered around on the floor. 2 large young pit bull dogs came to attention as the woman carried Wiggy into the room. He became silent and still. She lowered him to the ground. Wiggy ran for the newspapers that were humped up in a tiny tent-like structure on the living room floor. The evening news blared from the television, adding to a chaotic situation as the dogs came to life, barking at the rodent under the newspaper. He became as quiet as death. He was terrified. "Watch," said the woman. "He won't move a muscle." The people watched with amusement and glee on their faces. Humans in the room broke into laughter, pulled the dogs back, and eventually the dogs relaxed but remained entirely focused on the guinea pig. Wiggy's eyes and body were on high alert. He was frozen in place. I stayed open and observant. I wanted to understand how these people related to animals because it was far from my own perspective. And if Wiggy went home with me, I'd have an advantage knowing firsthand what traumas needed healing. Feeling free to share, they told me about another game they played with Wiggy. Because he would try and bite them during this balance game, they put on heavy gardening gloves. Then they hoisted the guinea pig up on a door frame where he had only an inch or 2 of molding to hold on to. They said they liked to, quote, check his balance. Again, Wiggy stayed motionless, fully aware that a fall from his narrow 6.5-foot-high ledge would likely kill or hurt him badly. "I'll check with my housemates and the landlord and let you know tomorrow about whether I can adopt Wiggy," I told them. I had to consult Wiggy, too, and I had to sleep on it. I had heard and seen enough, said goodbye and left. Voice of Spirit whispers. By the next day, the housemaid and the landlord had given the green light to allow me to adopt the little herbivore. Everyone was on board, except for Wiggy. When I asked him telepathically from across town that night if he'd like to come with me, he said, "No, I love my people." But after a moment, he asked me to show him the details of what I was offering. Where would I be going? What would the new life look like? And how would we travel there? He asked. I showed him the answers to each of his questions with telepathic pictures. I would purchase a small carrier, fill it with hay, and we would ride 5 or 6 hours in the car to get to our destination. He would have a comfortable habitat, and I would research how best to care for him. I told him I'd never had an animal friend like him before, and I would need to get myself educated. By early evening, when I checked on him again, he had decided to come along. The next day, I picked him up and placed him on fresh Timothy hay in the carrier. I told him I was happy he was coming along and wanted him to feel what it was like to be loved and respected. I told him that was my goal for him as my animal companion. "I'm glad you decided to take him," the woman said. "I didn't want to care for him anymore, so I was going to release him into the field out back." The ride home was uneventful, but Wiggy was the most sensitive animal I'd ever met once he was in his new habitat. He dashed around in his cage and ran from human hands. He squeaked and squealed whenever he was picked up, and it was very frightening for him, and I fully understood why. "Nothing good ever happens when the hands get a hold of you," he told me. "These hands will never hurt," I replied. Often I just sat, my hands cupped along the 2 longest sides of Wiggy's small furry body, practicing mindfulness and a profound sense of being with him, or sometimes sending him love and safety, caused him to trust my hands, but it took nearly a year. Even after his trust grew, Wiggy felt safest behind the small vertical bars of his habitat. Eventually, he showed me more reasons why he was so frightened. Desensitizing him to my hands was my first project. I wanted him to know that touch could be pleasant. The first time I had him in my lap to comfort him, he leapt to the floor, landing on the hardwood 3 or 4 feet away. I retrieved him quickly and told him, "Oh my goodness, little one, you don't need to fear my hands or me. Only good things will happen when I touch you. I'm so very concerned that you may have hurt yourself. Please feel my care and concern." Wiggy quietly squeaked back into my lap. I let him know that his fall to the floor could really hurt him, and I asked that he trust me. He was fearful for the first few times and bit at my clothing. "No bite," I told him, sending the feeling of my distress at his angst, followed by a message of care and nurturing. It only took handling him with love 3 or 4 times, and he quit biting. When I met him, Wiggy was allergic to newsprint that filled his aquarium. He sneezed insistently from the inks, had crusty ears, and had a cough from the cigarette smoke that filled the kitchen air where he lived on the floor. He learned to be loved and cared for in my home. He was the happiest rodent ever when I introduced him to favorite foods like broccoli, carrots, and dandelion greens especially. He loved the core of any fruit or vegetable and squeaked, popping up in the air with delight when I served them. Wiggy lived 8 years, 6 as my companion. He stopped biting and started snuggling into my lap. His health was stellar until the end, and he always inspired me to eat more fresh vegetables with his love for salad. Spirit's intervention in supplying me with the perfect animal companion under my restrictive living conditions touched my heart. It was a wondrous flow of help and support that I called on more than once to show me the way to my perfect animal companion under restrictive circumstances. Cavia porcellus is the taxonomic name for guinea pigs, and many folks who have these rodents as pets call them cavies. Cavia is the genus, and porcellus is the species. The plural form of cavy is cavies, taken from the genus Cavia.
For more episodes in the series, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. To learn all about Suzan Vaughn and her services, visit our website at animalwhisperer.net. Be part of the community by subscribing to our Facebook page, animalwhisperer.net. Then sign up for Suzan's newsletter to enjoy more of her fascinating animal-human communication stories. So, until next time, join Susan as she talks to the animals on The Animal Whisperer.